I originally started writing this yesterday, and was planning on doing the video yesterday, but time was not on my side, so I'm doing it today. But it definitely was inspired by my thoughts on International Women's Day. As I'm saying this, I'm about to put on this boxing rap. That this isn't like, oh, I'm thinking about women's gonna hit me. No, nothing like that. You'll see. It's a problem. It makes sense. It started with me thinking about when I was a kid, because honestly, we think about women in our lives. Usually, the first one we go to is a lover or a parent. And in my case, it was thinking about my mom and thinking about my childhood as a result. And I don't know how that led to thinking about sports, but that's what happened. So when I was a kid, I was very weak and uncoordinated. I've talked about all this before. An awkward child with poor social skills, no athletic ability whatsoever, a nerd. Sports in particular were difficult. I was that kid. I think I had, honestly, like an undiagnosed, I probably still have, an undiagnosed ADHD or something along those lines. The second that the action starts, whether it's the whistle blows or the puck drops or whatever, I am flooded with like sensory overload. And I describe it like I've been grabbed up in a tornado, and the tornado doesn't seem to touch anyone else, but it sure as fuck grabs me and just takes me for a ride. What that taught me back then was that I was a nerd. I was not supposed to be athletic or coordinated or remotely healthy. And I kind of just, that's what I assumed. So, more fool me. But, so I just didn't play sports. Certainly not competitively. When you had to do it in phys ed class, you did it, but that was about that. Later in life, when I got fat, I knew that I had to do something about it. And I didn't know what to do, so I actually got involved in playing flag football. And it was exactly the same situation. The minute that ball snapped, I was overloaded, freaked out. And my coach, and by coach I mean the angry newfie who ran the defensive line, was actually, oh, that's not gonna work, was actually really remarkably helpful. He pulled me aside and called me all kinds of names, and he explained to me that my job was really fucking easy. I was on the defensive line, so that meant there's a guy in front of me who's an offensive lineman. I have to run through him, and then collapse the pocket. In other words, your quarterback, if you're not a sports person, your quarterback is inside the pocket. So that spot where he takes the snap and the offensive linemen are around him to protect him creates a pocket around him. So my job is to collapse that, try to give him less room to move so he can't roll away and have all the time in the world, and just put the pressure on. And if I got the opportunity, reach over, snap that old flag off, and everything be great. I will not lie to you. Still absolutely terrible at it. But I was able to play. I was able to use that to focus my brain and say, okay, I know I've got only these things to do. Everything else doesn't matter. And that tornado in my mind would abate and I could actually play. And as time went on, by using the same approach, I was able to learn various positions playing football. Again, never a great football player. It was beer league flag football, and I was not the star of the team. Not me bragging about my Polk High football glory or anything like that. I didn't honestly like football that very much. It wasn't my thing, but it got me moving, and it got me thinking about exercise and what I liked. And then I got into initially Taekwondo and later boxing. I really like fighting. I don't like fighting like getting into fights. I don't like fighting like having conflict with people. Both of those things are repellent to me. But the art of fighting and doing it in that environment where it's safe and intentional, and everyone that's there is expecting to get punched in the face or kicked in the stomach or whatever, That's an amazing experience, in my opinion. And when I started it, I had the same experience where, I wanted to do this. I would start doing it, and immediately all the world was raging around me. And I knew from my experiences with football that I had the ability to calm my mind down and focus and narrow things into the specific little tasks that I would need in order to be able to do that. And it worked. It was great. I was able to, I did competitions and things. Again, was not a fighter, was not like a tough guy who would go on to be the world champ or anything like that. Like, but I was able to enjoy it. I have a couple of silver medals. It should be noted, however, that they're silver medals in the old men who are fat category. So I'm just a regular guy who sometimes did some tournaments and had a modicum of success. Yeah, sparring competitions, fighting, those things are fun for me when it's a consensual, safe practice as opposed to, getting in bar brawls or, menacing people on the street. That ain't my jam. And I also love analogies. I was putting all this together in my mind, actually. That's why I'm putting on wraps, is because I was thinking about boxing as an analogy, and specifically the jab. So the jab, it's kind of a throwaway punch. You're not going to knock somebody out with a jab. Like that's really really unlikely. That's where like what they call the striker's chance. Where those are flukes count. They're not real likely scenarios. The jab sort of fills two roles in my not so expert opinion. The first is the piss off, and the second is the setup. So the piss off is exactly that. You hit the guy in the face. You're not hitting them hard. Again, I'm speaking from my perspective as a guy. You could hit a girl in the face, and no, I'm not saying, well, because the women are equal, so therefore. Nothing like that. Just that women box, and it's okay. But you hit your opponent in the face, and it's not intended to win the fight, but it is certainly fucking annoying. You keep doing that and keep having that happen. It distracts and it annoys, and there's a natural instinct to make it stop. That is the piss off. The other thing the piss off does is it distracts you and it takes your attention away from what else is coming, right? I don't mean in the concept of the setup, because that's the other type. But the piss off is if I keep hitting you here, your hands are going to go up here to block it, and then I'm able to punch you in the stomach, not because I've thought this through necessarily, but because your hands are up here and I'm like, oh, hey, that's free. So the other one is the setup. And that's, we hear about like the 1-2 punch, right? Yeah, I made sound effects. It's a problem. The jab is to set the whole process up, and then you have your follow through. It's intended to be not the thing that wins the fight, the thing that sets you up to win the fight. The world around us right now, I mean, everybody complains about the fact that we are so polarized and so diametrically opposed right now. And I feel that. Every day feels in its own right like it's a boxing match. And, we're getting hit from all sides, and we have to figure out whether it's a piss off or a setup. Because that's an important thing. So cancel culture, jab. Trans people in bathrooms, jab. Protest restrictions near nebulously defined critical infrastructure, jab. Abortion debate, jab. Some of these things, like the complaints about so-called cancel culture, they're throwaway punches, right? They're designed just to be fucking annoying and to constantly keep knocking our heads around and keeping us distracted from what's going on, right? If a potato doesn't have a cock, or if a dead man's racist drawings don't get published, this doesn't hurt our culture or end our way of life as we know it, right? But they are jabs, and we feel like we have to respond to them at all times. They're not going to take us out, but they're draining, and that's the point, right? Trans bathroom laws, gay wedding cakes, reopening the abortion debate. These things are setup punches. When they land, they sting, but the next thing is bound to be even worse, right? They're what you can think of as precursor laws. On the surface, they seem like they don't matter, right? And I'm going to use the example of abortion because abortion, believe it or not, that was what my head went to when I was thinking about International Women's Day, was a woman's right to choose. I'm a Canadian. We have this habit of like America is our big nosy brother to the south, and we take everything that America does and we go, oh, well, that's us, right? So Biden is my president, even though I don't have a president. In America, they had Roe versus Wade. In Canada, we had R versus Morgentaler. Yes, Morgentaler. I don't wanna be your friend. Time you borrow is time I lend. Not that Morgentaler. Dr. Henry Morgentaler. And that's actually fascinating. The whole story of Dr. Henry Morgentaler and the voyage of getting to the point where women were allowed to have abortions, because it was a criminal act in Canada. Oh, Canada, our home and native. It was some serious shit. And Morgentaler fought that. In 1988, they ruled down the abortion laws. Now, 1988 ain't that fucking long ago. For some of you, you maybe weren't born, but for me, now this is a quote directly from the Wikipedia page, but it's the quote from Chief Justice Dixon. Forcing a woman by threat of criminal sanction to carry a fetus to term unless she meets certain criteria unrelated to her own priorities and aspirations infringed on the woman's right to security of the person. That's a long and much more eloquent way of saying my body, my choice. It means not a woman's husband, not a woman's doctor, not a woman's government, not a woman's employer. None of those people had the right to decide whether or not that person was allowed to have an abortion. Like, I helped a buddy of mine quite a few years back actually, run for political office in the province where I live, the beautifully forested province of Alberta. And like literally like 50% of the time you went to a door that was a conservative person, they would ask about abortion. And they didn't ask about it because it was relevant. Abortion in Canada is not a province situation. It's a federal law, and it's across the board. But they kept bringing it up, right? It's a yardstick. It's a simple way for some ill-informed person to look at you directly and be like, what do you stand on abortion? And what they're really saying is, are you a Christian? Do you believe in morality? Or are you some heathen? A flair for the dramatic with my boxing raps. It keeps showing up. It keeps showing up in the form of closures to abortion clinics. Difficulties with legislation coming in that says like the doors in an abortion clinic have to be a certain width, or the walls have to be a certain width, knowing that means that some clinics simply will not be able to perform abortions because their doors aren't big enough. Dumb shit like that. It's all about adding bullshit hoops. R versus Morgentaler should have been the knockout punch on this conversation. Or at the very least, anything further should have been a challenge to that decision on a grand level. So they throw their jabs, right? They make it an issue where you have to have these ridiculous conditions around your abortion clinic and the length of hallways and things like that. They allow protesters within a certain amount of space to humiliate and degrade women who are going in for services. They sue for the ability or for the requirement for you to sit through conversations about the sanctity of life for this decision that you're making, which for the record is fucking sick. The idea that you have to, make someone, it's to me, this is like an even more monstrous version of saying, hey, homeless person, I will help you, I will feed you, but first you got to let me tell you about the Jesus. It's a dick move. And taking someone who is having an abortion, who's already in a very emotionally fraught state and being like, first we're going to berate you with facts about your unborn child that you're murdering. Well, that's fucking cruel. The harder they make it, the more they bleat about it, the more it just remains in the public eye. And the punches just keep falling. And they make it harder and harder. They make it further and further from being accessible to everybody. They make it ostensibly illegal when it's perfectly legal, but it's not accessible. Right? That's the game. Issues like trans bathroom bills and hijab bans, they're the same thing. They're opening salvos in a larger set of attacks, a flurry, as it were, of attacks. And then come the crosses, the uppercuts, the hooks. Those are the things that get the win. But you got to chip away first. Lower their defenses, set them up, make them fight from their back foot. You take away the little pieces, and then all of a sudden the big pieces fall. I could have made this video about any of those kinds of attacks, which are they all share one thing in common, and that is that they're attacks on whether it's women or people of color or the poor. They're all attacks against the marginalized populations. It's International Women's Day. I chose abortion. It could have been any of those topics. It's all the same thing. The little piss-off jabs that keep us distracted and keep us guessing. The setup jab that brings about that first hit in a series that knocks us on our asses. And that distraction, that disorientation that comes with not knowing which is which. We're punch drunk. For the record, I agree with Chief Justice Dixon. It's wrong to force a woman to remain pregnant under threat of criminal prosecution. The argument about when life becomes life and all that shit, they're non-arguments. They're religion. And when you make laws based around a religion, you are enforcing your religion on people who don't adhere to it, which is not what we want. It's a bad thing, right? You're welcome to your religious beliefs, and you are absolutely welcome to think that someone who got an abortion is a monster. You're welcome to think that someone who is about to have a gay wedding is a monster. You can think that all you like. It's your prerogative. But your beliefs, they're not the law. The core of the argument that Dixon was making is that a woman should have autonomy over her body. Men should have autonomy over their body. We do have autonomy over our bodies. No one ever questioned that. When I went for a vasectomy, nobody asked me what my wife might think one day. But if I was a woman and I was going for a tubal ligation, you're damn sure that my doctor would be asking about my husband's feelings and all of this. That's gross and it's wrong. A woman owns her own body, like I said. Not her husband, not her boss, not her minister, not her mayor, not her prime minister, not her doctor, no one but her. And it's disgusting that we had to fight till 1988 for that simple fucking truth at the Supreme Court level. And it's equally disgusting that they just keep throwing those jabs and they won't lie down and accept defeat on this one. This just has to stop. Happy International Women's Day.